My name is Elise Gray, and this is Boston College at Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts, and I am a graduate student in the lab of Markian Goebbels. This is a parasitology lab, so we study a parasite called Toxoplasma gondii, which I lovingly refer to as the cat poop parasite. Yeah, it's the one where they tell women not to scoop the litter because it's found in cat litter. But we researched that here because it causes disease in people, mostly in unborn fetuses. It can cause birth defects, and then also in the immune compromised, so people who have cancer or an organ transplant or are HIV positive. I'm originally from Colorado. I live right outside the mountains of Denver. And I've actually been interested in science for pretty much forever. I feel like most people who are in biology specifically have always been naturally curious and really excited about exploring the world around them. And I was always, hiking outdoors, and there's a lot of wildlife where I grew up, and so there were like deer and bears and mountain lions and foxes, and so I remember I would always have these stakeouts during the evenings in the summer trying to spot wildlife, and so I really enjoyed that. So the reason I chose biology was because I really liked the problem-solving aspect and kind of trying to discover all of these kind of weird mechanisms that nature has developed to solve interesting problems. And so I think the problem solving is really why I became a biologist. Our main focus of our research here is to look at the pathogenic life stage of the parasite. So most parasites actually have this very complex life cycle that involves usually multiple animals, multiple hosts, and the parasite itself will actually have different forms. So we focus on the one that is infective to humans. And what we're trying to do is understand how this cycle works. Because the parasites, their cells have a lot in common with our cells, but there's also a lot that's different. And we're hoping by understanding the differences and understanding the mechanisms behind how they replicate or how they cause disease can go far to help treat people who have toxoplasmosis. I've often told my mom that I have to get off the phone with her because I have to go feed my parasites. So they live in cells. They're called obligate intracellular parasites because they must live inside another cell or else they'll die. And we actually grow them in a human cell line that was produced a number of years ago from basically medical waste. And the parasites, we infect the human cells, and the parasites will grow inside them. Then they'll leave the cell and want new cells to infect. And so then we take some from the old flask of parasites, put it in a new flask with fresh host cells, and that's how we culture them in the lab. So our lab does do mostly more basic science and less applied, but the idea is that through our research we can figure out what makes a strain of parasite more virulent or more harmful than others. We can figure out where these strains come from and how they change. And we can also identify potential drug targets, and I think that's a big one. And while our lab does not discover new drug targets, that's not our goal. What we do is we try to identify what parts of the parasite would make good drug targets. And this is really important not only for toxo, but also for malaria, which we're actually having an increasing problem, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, with resistance to antimalarial drugs. And so hopefully our research in the future could add to this knowledge to make better drugs for these parasites. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions about being a scientist is that it's a very uncreative work, but one of the reasons why I chose to go into science is because it's very creative. And I think a lot of people are intimidated by the amount of coursework or the length of education that it requires to be a scientist. But I think that all of those things are attainable for anyone who wants them. And I think that the more creative sorts of people we have from all sorts of different places, the science will advance faster. Because a lot of times you have to come up with ideas and experiments that are really unusual or that maybe a lot of people haven't thought of before. And so I think the more different viewpoints we have, the better we'll be. And I think the more people are interested in the science, the more we'll have that.